Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I was talking to one of the brothers in the comment section today regarding Ayah, and I said the message and the negativity that we have for the situation with Ayah is the reason why Muslim women consider Muslim man misogynistic. It's also the reason why individuals in the West don't want Muslims in their country because of the mindset of some Middle Eastern man. Not all Middle Eastern man. And I do my best at trying to educate the brothers because I feel like Muslim man in the Middle East live in a bubble, right? You've been born into a Muslim family. This is all you know. It's almost like it's your way or the highway, and you don't realize or regard how people in other countries view that chain and that line of thinking. So I try to come here to be centralized and give the brothers the message and let you know, hey, that your way of thinking, your way of life, it's not flying in the West. And some of you don't realize how harmful it can be, not knowing how harmful you are. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the brother Malcolm X. The brother Malcolm X um, formerly was a part of a group of black Muslims in Chicago and Michigan and throughout America called the Nation of Islam. This particular group of black Muslims, they were very racist. They believed that the white man was the devil, and in order for black people to uprise, we must stay within the whims and the rims of ourselves. We don't need to have relationship with Arabs or with Chinese or with white. They can do nothing for us. Only black people can redeem black people. That was the message. Malcolm X later on came to discover that Elijah Muhammad, which was considered a prophet of Islam, was having outer marital sexual behavior. He had impregnated two women and had two children outside of his marriage. And when the brother Malcolm X discovered this, he was shocked. He was hurt. Obviously, the first thing that he did was he was like, no way this happened, right? Because he had discovered that the women had been excommunicated. They had been ousted. They weren't allowed to come into the mosque. They weren't allowed to speak to anyone. These women were considered prostitutes. They were considered a kafir. They were considered unclean because they had kids, and the woman didn't want to say who the father was. So the woman finally told who the father was, and it ended up being Elijah Muhammad. Malcolm X found this out through Elijah Muhammad's father. Elijah Muhammad's son, Warith Dean Muhammad. And when he found this out, he was shook and he confronted Elijah Muhammad about it. May Allah be pleased with him. And Elijah Muhammad's response was, Brother Malcolm X, I am the prophet who they speak about in the Quran, which is shirk, which is kufr. I am the prophet who they speak about in the Quran. You see, in the Quran, the Prophet Muhammad had 9 wives, and even King Solomon had 666 concubines and something like that, right? And I am doing nothing but fulfilling my duties. So Malcolm X was confused. He like, no, brother, this is not Islam. So Malcolm X, because he was hurt, he said nothing for a while, but he confided in a couple brothers. One, the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, and there was another brother, I can't think of his name. So when he told these brothers, pretty much they said there's no one worthy of worship but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. So whatever Muhammad has to say, that's our say, right? Because they literally believe that Elijah Muhammad is Jesus in the flesh, and they believe that a Caucasian man by the name of Far W. Muhammad came in the form of Allah and taught Elijah Muhammad and gave Elijah Muhammad the message of Islam. That's literally their cornerstone. That's a part of their shahada. They go, all praise be to Allah who came in a form in the flesh of Master Fard Muhammad and gave Elijah Muhammad the message. But back to the situation at hand. These sisters were ousted. They was treated like trash. And finally, this story had started to get some traction. So it started to make the news and things like that. Now, keep in mind, these women, like I said, were treated like trash, were treated like prostitutes. And there was just no redeeming these women. So, obviously, imagine the person who you look up to fathered kids outside of wedlock, but teaching you the message of Islam. It's a big contradiction. But once again, the man in the circle, they didn't chastise him or they didn't treat the prophet bad. They had his back. He could do no harm. So Malcolm X being confused with this new information and watching his brothers pretty much not take the women's side or even take his side, and it got so bad to the point that the people who he confided in, they told Elijah Muhammad, and Elijah Muhammad excommunicated Malcolm X. Hey, brother, you have to step away. You're no longer a minister. You're not a part of the nation. You're speaking against the prophet. This is haram. So Malcolm X started to inquire about Al Islam. You know, he started to inquire about Orthodox Islam. So Warth Deen Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad's son, was a part of this group. It's like a Salafi or something like that. But they pretty much was teaching Orthodox Islam. So Malcolm X went to Mecca. There's a biography about this. He went to Mecca and he said when he got to Mecca, he saw whites and Asians and Africans and Tanzanians and Tarzanians and Australians, and he was like, "What? I was just taught that Islam is just black people." So he discovered that real Islam has no color, has no race. There's no superiority over a black over a white, so on and so forth. And he really was shaken. So when he got back to America after taking his true Shahada, his real Shahada, he wanted to spread that version of Islam to the Americas. And that version of Islam being reinforced by Malcolm X was too powerful for the government um, to adhere to. They didn't want this to happen. So they assassinated Malcolm X. And that's the history, that's the story. But to reflect where do these stories tie with Aya and just man in general, like how they treat women. Keep in mind, these women were ousted. They were outcast, and nobody believed them. And this story led to Malcolm X leaving the Nation of Islam. Just one brother, everybody went against him. And it eventually led to his death. So I want the Muslim brothers that hear this message to really think about this. Protect your sisters. Protect their honor. Remember the story of Aisha radiallahu anha when the Prophet Muhammad was upset with her when the caravan went ahead of her and she got lost and came back, just her and another one of the brothers, and Prophet Muhammad wasn't pleased until Allah revealed a surah saying, she didn't do what you think she did, so forgive her. So I just want us to be more cautious in stories like this. Like, we don't want to make things worse for the women in Islam. We don't want to make it worse for anybody. When somebody is speaking up and trying to tell a story, we must open our ears and not have a hard heart like Faroon. But that's my message for today. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I encourage you guys to look into the story of Malcolm X if you are a Middle Eastern Muslim or if you don't know too much about Malcolm X in general. I'm out.